Welcome to another Your Daily Environment. Now that I've finished reading The Once and Future World, I cannot recommend this book enough. I read you before the parts about how boats sailing across the Atlantic years ago would get stopped by schools of fish. And there are a few more parts of the book that I wanted to read. So I'm going to get to a couple parts and read some of them. So here, the last continent on Earth to be populated at the end of the Pleistocene was North America. So we're going to get a description of what North America was like some 15,000 years ago. It was the home of some hair-raising assortment of megafauna. Some of us are familiar with those giant animals like the mammoth and the mastodons that look like woolly elephants, like elephants in some parts of Africa today. They may have roamed the grasslands in densities of more than 7 animals per square mile. But North America, this is amazing, this part. It was also home to pampathirs, which resembled armadillos the size of overturned rowboats, and another armored family, glyptodonts, the size of a subcompact car, ground sloths, amiable-looking herbivores that often stood up on their hind legs and would weigh nearly 3 tons, herds of wild horses as heavy as today's Clydesdales, tapirs rooting through the wetlands, and an antelope called a saiga with a pouchy snout that acted as a dust filter. Now, a lot of times we're prone to say that Europeans came and destroyed everything, but everywhere that humans went, whether it was North America, South America, Australia, everywhere that humans showed up, we'd kill, exterminate, extirpate, he used in this book, whatever was there. So wild oxen drank at waterholes beside camels in North America that tower over today's dromedaries. So huge ones. Giant moose, giant llamas, giant elk, giant boars. There was a beaver nearly the size of a bear. There were monsters. Packs of dire wolves were widespread, the animals outweighing modern wolves by 20 pounds apiece, but still far from the most fearsome predators in this Pleistocene wilderness. That title probably goes to the short-faced bear, a flesh eater large enough to look you in the eye while still on all fours. The greatest feline. This is amazing. I mean, the overall theme of this book, I'm going to pause here for a second, is think of where you grew up. Think of nature. For me, I tend to think of, like, at the end of the block around the corner, there was just a wooded area, a bunch of trees on a hill. And a few years, I guess after I was in college, I went back home, and it was built over, so there are houses there. Think of something that was nature, that you thought of nature when you grew up. I bet it's probably gone, or probably largely changed. And this book points out that what we thought of as nature, what I would like to return to, is nothing compared to what was before. Okay, so the greatest feline, still haunting the pop-up book's nightmares of children, was the saber-toothed cat. I've heard of that, with serrated fangs as long as a chef's knives and a body twice the heft of a modern lion's. There were lions too. Prides of lions that were like today's in Africa and India in every way but one. They were larger. The list goes on. Scavenging birds with wingspans 15 feet, to beetles adapted to rolling the dung of giant animals. Then North America's megafauna began to disappear. Scientists have debated the cause, but evidence increasingly points to the spread of humans. Go to any corner of the planet, and the moment Homo sapiens shows up, in that place will be roughly the time that many of its largest species begin to fall toward the void of extinction. Africa's exception, which is interesting, with megafauna such as elephants, giraffes, lions, and hippopotamuses lived along people. Otherwise, the pattern holds. Everywhere we went, we knocked out the large animals. So people want to rewild areas. Rewild, I'm not sure if you can see where the pointer is here, make things wild again like they used to be. But let's go to the next part. It's page 236. Moving along to 236. So this is about, it talks about, what's it called? Galapagos. Early accounts of the tortoises, wait, maybe it's here. The Galapagos, however, are notable as one of the few corners of the globe where the landscape, as seen by the earliest human visitors, was actually recorded in writing. There are giant tortoises, or in the Spanish of the times, Galapagos. I guess that's where the name came from. The lumbering reptiles dominated the archipelago. Even islets too small to have permanent sources of fresh water were covered with the beasts. We lay here feeding sometimes in land turtle, sometimes on sea turtle, there being plenty of either sort. So people would eat these things. Say the adventurer and buccaneer William Dampier. What was the part that I wanted to read? The scale of such, oh yeah, the killing of these things. What people did with these giant animals. Very slow moving. The scale of such historical slaughters shocks us today, but until the advent of canned... Oh wait, let me go back to that. But there are so many even that after a century of butchery by the pirates, whalers, explorers, navy men, and other sailors, ships were still stopping by to bring as many as 800 or 900 tortoises aboard as fresh meat for the long, slow voyages. Because these things, you just give them a little bit of water every now and then, they don't die, and then you could slaughter them and eat them. Not only did they contain flesh so vitamin rich that it prevented scurvy, but also large amounts of fat, which could be spread like butter, or when heated, was said to be as light and flavorful as olive oil. The meat was apparently delicious. Quote, after once tasting the Galapagos tortoises, every other animal food fell greatly in our estimation, wrote one visiting sea captain, and was always fresh. The tortoises could be stacked like barrels and kept alive without food or water, in some cases surviving more than a year. In the first weeks after capture, tortoises were even a source of fresh water themselves, which could be drained from their bladders, though it was said that the best came from the membrane that enclosed their hearts. It's crazy how things used to be, things that now we would try, I was going to say that we would try to protect, but I think we would say we'd try to protect them, but then we would take over their habitat. As I speak now, there's fires going like crazy in the Amazon, and it's very profitable, and people say we shouldn't have done it, but we still do the things that lead to it being profitable. Early accounts of the tortoises are by no means limited to the thoughtless killing and cruelty. Sailors came to know these creatures well, and many admired them. The animal's strength was legendary. Large males were commonly 5 feet long, 4 feet wide, 4 feet tall, and weighed more than 400 pounds. I think that's the part that I wanted to read about there. And then page 264. Let's see. Oh, it was about Hawaii. Hawaii is the planet's most remote island chain, nearly 2,000 miles from the nearest habitable landfall. And most human settlers may have arrived there as late as 1250. And the influx made an immediate impression. Studies of the bones of ancient layers of sediment show that 60 species of birds, many of them large, flightless, and presumably tasty, soon went extinct. As soon as people showed up, they went extinct. Over the same time period, other desirable food species, such as sea turtles and the monk seal, suffered population crashes. Human hunting wasn't solely to blame. The Polynesians' pigs, dogs, and stowaway rats are also thought to have ravaged birds in their nests, spooked seals from their resting places and breeding grounds, and devoured the seeds of native plants and trees. So as soon as humans showed up, everything got destroyed. I mean, not totally destroyed. Now, apparently, for a while when there was trade with Polynesia, everything went down. But then when there was no trade, things started returning. During that long period, okay, so after that time, after the trade stopped, that long period of seclusion, something began to happen. The rate of species extinction appears to have slowed dramatically. The coral reefs, overfished in the first centuries after the Polynesians' arrival, entered in an era in which they declined little, if at all. You'd like to think that if we realized that we can't get away, that we can't just bring stuff in from outer places, that we would stop de-wilding, stop the destruction of our natural resources. So incredibly, the human population increased at that time to at least 400,000 people, to perhaps 800,000, not far off from the 1.4 million that are there today. And so this pattern happens, that when humans get there, they start destroying things. We start destroying things. If they're trapped, then they realize how to live, or if we're trapped and we realize we have to make do with what we have, then we start making do with what we have, and we start living in more harmony. And so I really recommend this book. You get this picture of nature, dramatically more untouched nature than I ever believed that was there. And it changes my perspective on things. Now, I want to point out something else that's very, very interesting. Okay, so J.B. McKinnon, he's an independent journalist, author. His works include The 100-Mile Diet. I think I referred to that last time. And this is something interesting and very coincidental. You might know that my parents met in India in the 60s. My sister was born in Rajkot in the state of Gujarat, India, in 1970. I was born in Philadelphia, but spent a year of my childhood in India. As it happens, there's a woman named Ela Bhatt who my parents were friends with, and she wrote this book, here's Ela Bhatt, called Anubandh, Building 100-Mile Communities. And it happened that she was in New Haven, near New York City, and I went up to have lunch with her the other day, and she gave me a copy of this book. And I found this online one so I could show you a passage in this book. First of all, let's say about Ela Bhatt. Ela Bhatt started the Self-Employed Women's Association in India, which now has, I believe, millions of members. She's got degrees from Harvard, Yale. She's a member of the Elders, which she was invited by Nelson Mandela to join this group, which includes Jimmy Carter, Desmond Tutu, other Nobel laureates. And when she grew up, she didn't meet Gandhi, but she is now involved with she saw him drive by, she said. And she was about 15, 16, I think, when he died. But she is described as a Gandhian. And I want you to read the beginning of this book. Where's the very beginning? Did I skip it? Did I miss it? Here. A few summers ago, during my visit to my sister in Canada, I heard a great deal of talk about a book that recommended eating food grown within a 100-mile radius. The idea generated considerable interest in buying fresh produce from local farms, in eating 100-mile diets, and even planting kitchen gardens in Canada. I believe that is J.B. McKinnon's book, which I happen to know about, and I happen to be living something like it. I don't consciously think I want to live a 100-mile diet, but I think since he wrote that book a while ago, that it's worked its way into my consciousness, and I'm living it. And then lo and behold, I have lunch with Ela Bhatt, longtime friend of my family, also friend of Desmond Tutu and previously Nelson Mandela, Jimmy Carter, and people like that. So a lot of coincidence. It's kind of weird how much things overlap like that, but I wanted to share that. And that is your daily environment. I highly recommend The Once and Future World, getting to know the nature that's been around us. Thank you very much. Talk to you later.